Howdy, everybody. Hey. So, this is something that I've been wanting to do. I didn't know if I wanted to do it for the nation cycles or for zodiac seasons, but I guess I'll come in and do it on this one. And it could be adapted to, it could be adapted to zodiac seasons as well. I've already given some of these. Well, not some of these. I've already given the other two a good shuffle. Well, I shuffle because I'm going to shuffle more on camera. But I had to write it down so I don't forget. I'm going to be looking at some things that we need to recall or keep in mind coming into this new moon in Aquarius, Chinese Lunar New Year, and also what we have to gain. And so on the side of what we need to keep in mind or recall, I'm going to use this deck to pull from the previous new moon period, this deck to pull from the previous full moon, and then in what we have to gain, this will be the more apparent thing, this will be the more underlying thing. And so we're coming into the new moon in Aquarius, which means the previous full moon was a full moon in Leo, and then it was a new moon in Capricorn before that. Now this is kind of sort of the end of the new moon Capricorn sort of cycle. That should be sort of waning and fading out, but all things, most things, a lot of things are connected, and when we learn one thing, it's not for us to sort of, forget about it. Forget about it. It's for us to carry it forward with us. Okay. So, first will be what we need to keep in mind or recall. Then next will be what we need to, or what we have to gain from this full moon Aquarius, or new moon Aquarius to new moon in Pisces season, no energy. Bottom of the deck is surrender, and then share wisdom is behind it. That's how it appeared. I might have to turn this light on as well so you can see these a little better. Yeah, there we go. So, share wisdom and surrender. This would be one of those times where my extra table is handy. I should have set it up. Didn't think I'd need it, honestly. 1 second. There we go. The question, or there's a line from a song that just popped into my head. It's from Into the Woods. It's from, and I've talked about it. It's the song about moments, a moment in the woods. And she's like, is it always or is it never and? But then she reaches the conclusion that, like, that's what woods are for those moments in the woods. And in the woods, you can have an and, but you can't make a home in the woods. And it's the and that teaches you to appreciate the or. And take that in whatever way you see fit. So from the previous full moon, which was the full moon in Leo, I don't have dates today. It ain't that researched. Maybe in the future. So from the full moon in Leo, okay. And then the apparent, is that the Ten of Cups? The Ten of Cups and the Seven of Cups are at the cut. And a third eye is featured in both of these. There's also a sort of hierarchy. There are levels to the cups in both of these as well. In the Seven of Cups, the third eye has thorns around it, so the vision is restricted. In this card, there's 2 stars. So that's an internal and an external healing. Well, it's an internal healing that leads to like external realization. And so it's like it restores some hope in the external. And that restored hope in the external because of the internal healing is the reflection of that healing. And that sits with the Ten of Cups. Okay. Ooh, Chariot. All right. It seems like things are about to be moving. Bottom of the deck over here is the Sovereign of Wands. Just saw the Queen of Wands. Sovereign of Wands was with the 3 of Cups and the 6 of Cups that had an overall 9 of Cups energy. And that was about us not particularly being able to see something in the past the way we can see it now. Maybe something had to happen and or transpire in order to get us to somewhat appreciate, but honestly to just see. Because I feel like the appreciation is natural. And if we could have seen it for what we've seen it now, there would have been an appreciation for it. Sometimes when it comes to appreciation, there are some things that it's like we saw it for what it was. We just didn't have the capacity to understand how special it was. And so maybe there was a little bit of a lack of appreciation, but I think there was also a not complete vision as well. So, but we'll see. Who knows? And then Surrender was on the bottom of the deck with Share Wisdom. So, from the previous new moon, let's see what we get. From the previous new moon, and then the more underlying aspects of what we have today. Now, the more underlying ones, these may be the ones that are more difficult to see. But hopefully there's a bridge between the apparent and the underlying, so that if something does occur and if it does hold sort of deeper meaning or significance or more possibility within it, it'll help us to recognize that. Goodness. All right. Bottom of the deck over here is the Seven of Swords. So it feels like there's an element of loss here, but also an element of like clouded vision or a clouded mind. Like not being able to think straight or to think clearly. And in that sort of confusion or in that murkiness, maybe that's why we couldn't see or appreciate whatever it is that we couldn't in the past. And so there's like some spring cleaning that's needed to be done in order to get us to so I was thinking of an attic with like a whole bunch of cobwebs and it's like dusty, right? But there's something about when the light shines through the crack and then you see the dust floating in the air. And how even though you know it's dust, and if you walk into it, you probably start to like cough and sneeze, it looks magical. And so maybe what it is that you need to appreciate most is you. Okay, well, let's get into this over here. Ooh, we got the movement card, and movement has shown up recently. Oh, my phone is still on silent. Let me see. I'm going to time stamp these. I don't know why I do that sometimes now. Does anyone know? Excuse me. Do you know why I do that? You know why the caged bird sings? No, I'm sorry. I guess maybe that's a question for you. Maybe that's what I'll title this. So this is, I'll say 1040. 10-4. What's your 10-4? So movement. I'll read it out the book. Movement is fire. Manifest, take risk. Let's see. Maybe not. It is fire. 62. Hey, there's surrender. Oh, that's water. I went way too far. Am I wearing the right glasses? I'm not. Okay. I'm like, it should be more magnified than this. Hello, what's happening? 1 second, y'all. I'm gonna pause this and then find my readers. Oh, here they are. Never mind. I was like, it should look bigger than this. Here we go. 62. Movement. Oh, it was literally the page after where I gave up. Because I thought maybe within the element it was alphabetical. So I saw manifest. Because I was sure it was fire, and then take risk, and then destruction. And I was like, oh, well, let me go to the table of contents. And literally on the page after that is what I was looking for. So maybe you're a lot closer to getting something than you think. Like intuitively, it's a mixture of intuition and knowledge. Right? Because first it's like, it's a combination. And is there a separation between intuition and knowledge? I think the separation comes in because the knowledge piece is something that you have to think about. But once you're on the right track, then your intuition takes over, or vice versa. Maybe your intuition will tell you where to start, but then your knowledge takes over from there. Or you're closer to something than you think you are. So, what we need to recall or keep in mind is movement. This says physical movement can quick start major shifts in our internal and external worlds. While this movement can take any form, keep in mind that the type of movement we do can invite in the emotions and experiences associated with it. Intense and vigorous movement can help us access our motivation, power, and fire. Slow and methodical movements can help us tap into our deeper feelings and is especially helpful in releasing, healing, and deeper work. When we move our body, we are allowing any stuck or stagnant energies within us to flow, bringing space for the new. What type of movement do you need? How can you incorporate it into your day more? Just about every culture in the world has feared and revered the snake. The snake. Sorry. There we go. Has feared and revered the snake. They have become a powerful symbol of rebirth and transformation due to the shedding of their skin. But there is so much to learn about the snake, especially from how it slithers. It has taken science a long time to understand how a snake moves, and moves fast, without legs. Initially, it was thought that they used their immediate environment to propel themselves forward, i.e., pushing off of rocks. But eventually, it was revealed that they use their scales to create friction with the Earth's surface, even tiny grains of sand, and that friction, combined with contracting their powerful muscles, pushes them forward. We can call on Snake as a teacher for using the friction in our life as an opportunity for movement. What? I didn't know that. That's crazy. Dandelion has gotten a reputation of being an annoying weed, but in reality, this little plant packs a powerful punch. It is loaded with vitamins and minerals. Vitamin C, fiber, potassium, iron, calcium, magnesium, zinc, and phosphorus, to name a few. It holds incredible medicine for our digestive system, in particular our stomach, liver, and pancreas. It supports us by stimulating the function of each organ while simultaneously detoxifying. In other words, it gets things moving. Emotionally, dandelion can support us in the same way. It can remove toxic imprints within our subtle bodies and attune you to a vibrant, empowered state. Where's the dandelion? I don't know. I see the snake and the fire opal. I don't know. Maybe it's hidden. Fire opal is a stunning bright orange/red stone, bright orange red stone, discovered in areas where volcanoes and hot springs have been active. Compare a volcano to our internal landscape. The magma lava is our life force, our passion and vibrancy. The layers of earth are the metaphorical blocks or limiting beliefs, i.e., I am too embarrassed to go to that dance class, or I want to learn how to draw but hate not being good at something. Fire opal is the stone that helps us move those layers, or move through those layers of fear and shame, allowing our passion and lust for experience to take hold. Call on fire opal as a guide to restoring movement where you have stuckness. So there's an energy of misconception in this movement card, like with the snake, or perception, and a little bit of misconception, right? Because we didn't know how snakes move. We thought that they use their environment to propel themselves forward, when in reality, they create friction. They create fiction. They create friction with surfaces to move forward. And friction is usually a force that slows things down, right? Or, yeah, it's the force that slows things down. So, like when you go ice skating, like there's very minimal friction between the blade and the ice, which is why, like, you kind of sort of just go flying. You don't really lose any momentum, or you don't lose as much momentum when you move. So it's easier to move. But the snake, it's like it takes advantage of disadvantage and of setbacks to propel itself forward. The dandelion is something that's seen as a weed, something that's seen as. It reminds me, I was just playing a game, Persona, last night. There's this one character that's like, I hate you because, like, you've overcome your circumstances. You are unique and you beat me at everything I do. Like, honestly, I can't stand you. And it's almost this energy of like, why aren't you destroyed, or why aren't you dismayed by what you've gone through? How can you be so strong while I am not? And it reminds me of this other show. It was the show I talked about, the show about magic, where there's people that have, like, the more magic you have, basically the more you can, more upward mobility you have in this world. And the royals naturally are born with the most magic, so they're already up there. And the people with very little magic are discriminated against, and they have torturous experiences. And so they go around and they gather all the people who have little to no magic, and they go seeking the power of devils and demons, because that's a power that amplifies magic through like possession and stuff like that, girl. So is it worth it? And then the main character has absolutely no magic. And there's a confrontation, and they're like, you must know how we feel as someone born without magic. Well, we want to go get the powers of the devil and then come back and destroy this kingdom that would cause us to suffer. And they're like, you're just like us, or we're just like you. And he said, no, you're nothing like me, because I went through all of that, and it didn't turn my heart hard. Like, I'm fighting to protect this kingdom. I'm using this power for good. And it's his strength of heart that keeps him from being consumed. And it's not something he necessarily asked for. he inherited it for some reason that we're starting to discover now. I'm excited, but it's getting really intense. But to not be victim to one's circumstances is that dandelion energy, and surprisingly, it nurtures us. It nurtures us in so many ways. And then, last but not least, is the fire opal, which is all about sort of overcoming those limiting beliefs and fears to achieve whatever it is that you're passionate about. So this movement card, it speaks of so much, like it says movement, but it speaks of all of the delays and all of the worries and the fears and the limitations, all of the reasons why you can't move or shouldn't be able to move. Almost like a bee, a bumblebee, how they're like aerodynamically, we can't make sense out of how they fly. Like it's like scientifically impossible. But these animals do it naturally. So, previous full moon in Leo. Full moon in Leo is Sun in Aquarius, Moon in Leo. So the moon is in a space of inner circle. The sun is in a space of outer circle. So that can be an energy of balancing internal and external social dynamics. And maybe there's someone on the outside that you want to bring closer in. Or on the flip side, there are people on the inside who sort of need to be pushed outside. But with the sun being in Aquarius and the moon being in Leo, it's more of an outside in type of feeling. So a feeling of wanting to draw certain people closer, or maybe a desire for a community or something like that. Now, the cards we have from that full moon period are the Five of Cups, the Three of Cups, and the Ruler of Coins. So the Five of Cups and the Three of Cups, this is an Eight of Cups energy. And the Eight of Cups is all about walking away from situations that, honestly, they're not for our highest good. They keep us stuck in some ways, potentially. It's like emotionally and even spiritually not good for us. Situations that have basically stagnated. It's stagnant water, and in stagnant water, that's where bacteria and all kinds of things begin to like blossom and flourish and grow. But with this movement card, something about that stagnancy will be propelling you forward in some way. And I think it comes in the Ruler of Coins. I think the Ruler of Coins is able to make a decision to separate from whatever needs to be separated from. Because maybe not only is it not serving you, but it's also draining you. It's taking away from what you could be doing with this Ruler of Coins. And the Ruler of Coins is like nurturing and a provider, but he's not one to let himself be taken advantage of, or not one to let himself be sort of, I guess, regressed in some way. And maybe regression is the word. Maybe you were finding some kind of strength within yourself, but then something in your external environment. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Because it's the Three of Cups and then the Five of Cups. So the Three Cups are upright in the Three of Cups, right? But in the Five of Cups, they're spilled. They're on the ground. But Two of Cups now stand there. So there's probably definitely been or a need to rebalance your internal and external environments. Mostly through a social space. Acquaintances, associates, and then friends in the in-between 11 and 5. And then like closer friends and maybe even family. But more like potentially like chosen family. Because like straight up family would be a little bit more of a fourth house energy. But like chosen family or extremely close friends would be kind of fifth house. And there's also an energy of impact, right? With the fifth house, it's a little bit more of a local impact, where it's like, you are the best singer, dancer, artist, smartest, whatever in your town. But when you take it to the 11th house and introduce Aquarian energy, it's like in the state, in the nation, on the planet, in the galaxy, in this sector quadrant of the universe, in the universe. That expands it. And so maybe too there was this energy of like, you I don't know if this is necessarily with the previous full moon in Leo, but it's an energy that's coming out of like you knowing how capable you are in something, going to expand in some way. But it's like a little bit of that, like when you were the big fish in a little pond and then you went to a bigger pond and you weren't the biggest fish, what it caused within you internally. And this, like going to Purdue, smart was part of so many people's identities. There are so many people who go to Purdue who are like the smartest in their school or the smartest in their town. And they go to Purdue and they find out you're not going to be the smartest here. And it's difficult. And honestly, for some people, it causes a little it causes an identity crisis, because smart and intelligent and smarter than, or being the smartest, is so core and so key to who they are, that when that's questioned, it's almost like they don't know how to function. And so too, maybe there's a need to branch out or fill out or explore more of your identity outside of a certain one or two things. Now, from the previous new moon in Capricorn, new moon in Capricorn is sun and moon in Capricorn, which carries a lot of energy of foundational stability and structural changes, or at least highlighting, right? So if you have a good foundation and structure, then you'd probably feel the goodness of it, and you would be good, but you'd be able to appreciate that. If your stability and structure isn't that great, then that new moon in Capricorn energy would bring it to your awareness, and then you'd have the choice to sort of address it or not. Now, the cards that came out here are the Pillar and the Two of Wands. And so maybe in that new moon in Capricorn, you discovered some things within yourself that you'd like to. I feel like with the Pillar, your foundation isn't terrible. Like the Pillar is literally coming out. But the Pillar more so supports something else than it does itself. So maybe with the Two of Wands coming off of the Pillar, that's you wanting to increase your own foundation, or to sturdy your own foundation, or maybe you want a healthier lifestyle or healthier habits. Maybe you want to distance yourself from your vices because you know that it's impacting and impeding your ability to progress within yourself. Or maybe you give too much to other people to the point where you don't have anything left to give for yourself. But this is what sort of like, this is closing. This energy here is still building, right? And this is going to be complete on the next full moon, more or less. And so we have this energy of like, you start by looking at your own foundations. And then somewhere along the line, you're looking at how people in your environment and what you give to emotionally and maybe even spiritually, how that either contributes or takes away from your ability to have that stability emotionally, mentally, and maybe even physically within your own life. And then with the Ruler of Coins, that's making some tough decisions. But it's like with the Ruler of Coins energy, you don't have to be cold to make a tough decision. Like you don't have to dislike somebody or hate somebody to reach that point where it's like, it's not gelling with me anymore. Simpatico. I don't know what that word means. I've heard it. It's like, this isn't simpatico anymore. And while I love you and while I love myself, I'm going to have to do what's best for me. And I don't have to, can I be disappointed or grieve the loss or the distance in this now? Yes. But you don't have to go to the extreme of like, well, I'm going to wait until I just can't stand this person anymore and then I'm going to do something, right? It's hard choices and hard decisions. It's not the King of Swords or even the King of Wands, where you're making choices and decisions in your own interest, kind of sort of like despite how it affects other people. The King of Wands in its shadow can be like that. The King of Swords in its shadow can be overly cold, right? It's not to reach necessarily either of those points. It's a difficult decision. But with this friction, it's like making that decision in that moment before it devolves to that point. It will empower you to make more difficult choices. Right? If you wait until the choice is easy, or if you wait until the choice makes itself, then it doesn't really make itself. And maybe that's something that I'm learning right now that I didn't even see. Because there was a whole little karmic situation 2019. But I waited until like physical distance was there to end it. And it's not that I'm necessarily in another karmic situation, but that situation started in a way very similar to how another situation almost started like months ago now. But I was like, you know what? I already did this. I'm not doing this again. Like I'm good. And I can maintain this like friendship that I have. So win, right? Well, the last friendship wasn't really a friendship. It became a friendship, but it was like trauma bond. And so it started off not great. Anyway, so that's what we have to recall, how disappointments, setbacks, friction in the past actually propelled us forward. Here, from the from the full moon in Leo, we're learning to remove resistance and friction because like we're not snakes, we're multi-dimensional, multifaceted creatures, right? And so there will be a certain element of forward movement that comes through the space of friction. Like you don't know how strong you are until you have to be that strong. But also we have other methods and modalities of movement. And so this is easing the tension and like lightening the burden and the restriction in those areas where we naturally move without friction. This down here, it's all about the foundation in general. And then new moon in Aquarius builds off of Capricorn energy. So now that your foundation is set, now that your foundation is a lot healthier, like what are you capable of now that you weren't capable of before? How can you move forward and progress now that you never would have been open to before? And it's not that you never would have been open to it necessarily. It's just you're a lot freer now because of what you've already done with that review of Capricorn energy within your own life. So, next we have the Magi. Ooh, movement in the Magi. This is crazy. Alright, this is some good energy. It'd be funny if the Magician pops up. Because the Magician is the Magi in this deck as well. I'm going to say this is 3414. And let's get into it. The Magi is definitely ether, not the observer. Oh, here he is, right here. Didn't even have to look at the table of contents that time, because this time I knew to trust my intuition / knowledge. See how quickly we learn sometimes, even though in real life it may feel slower. The Magi. The Magi indicates a period where you need to look deeper. It asks you to examine what you think you know and then keep going. Throughout our lives, we build an infrastructure of beliefs that allow us to navigate life, but so often this system is built on top of a shaky foundation or out of weak materials. In other words, it is a time to question that which you have never noticed. What beliefs inform your decisions, passions, and ambitions? The Magi is a seer of illusion, and in turn, they are able to cut through the fog and get to work. The Magi may see the world similar to a mirrored funhouse. They see the core of each experience and are able to acknowledge how many different realities exist in a single moment. Being able to see these many realities is a gift. It teaches us to be less attached to a single road, but instead see where all the roads meet. If we are courageous enough to see and be open to our life unfolding along any of the various roads, we invite in a magic that few get to experience. Even a balanced Magi can frustrate people. They have some trickster energy in that they can see the bigger picture and may know the answer, but they will present the information to you in a way that may spin your head. They are gifted with words, and everything they say can have multiple meanings. When Magi is unbalanced, they can be very manipulative and self-seeking. They may talk down to others as they believe themselves to be greater and more knowledgeable, rather than present information meant to challenge others in the expectation that it will ultimately be empowering. The unbalanced Magi will present information in a way that is meant to make the other person feel small. In fact, they may enjoy the fact that others don't understand. That reminds me of some professors who would feel pride in the number of students that they fail in their class. Like, oh, my class is difficult, my class is challenging because of whatever we associate difficulty. It's like maybe in their head it makes them like they think they look better, maybe because of the level or magnitude of the things that they're teaching. But if your job and if your role as a teacher and the majority of your students fail, then you're failing as a teacher. And that's what you are first and foremost. That's what your role is. But I think with the Magi, it's an interesting balance because it's like, even though sometimes they present, oh, there's the pillar. I'm going to read that again. Rather than present information meant to challenge others in the expectation that it will ultimately be empowering, the unbalanced Magi will present information in a way that is meant to make the other person feel small. And so I think sometimes it's an interesting balance, and it's one that's probably difficult to maintain in a general sense. It's one that you would have to know someone in order to like issue them a challenge without making them feel small. But so too does it fall on the person to receive the message, right? Because you can issue a challenge to somebody and it makes them feel small because of whatever they have that, like whatever triggers they have within themselves that are not yet addressed. But with the Magi, it's all about the intention and the delivery behind it. How other people take it, you have no control over. And the Magi knows that. That's what leads to some of these multi-road situations, because you can speak something to someone and either they take it this way that progresses themselves, they take it in a way where they sort of keep on the same trajectory, or they take it in a way that actually sets them back. And if you're someone who has like multiple contacts with that person, then it increases the ramifications or the stratification, is that a word? How many, like instead of one path branching off into three, there's one that branches off into three, and then those three branch off into nine, and then those nine branch off into 27, and then those 27 branch off into what, 81, and so on and so forth. What, 123? No, 120. 80 is 243, right? Hey Siri, what is 81 times 3?
81 times 3 is 243.
That's so interesting. It is 243, but I wouldn't think that anything goes into that necessarily. Anyway, that's what this energy is over here. This is what we have to gain. We have to gain this Magi energy of seeing the many different ways that something can work out. And it takes me back to this drawing that I made. And you, in this path, you can see the curved line is the natural progression and how we were supposed to hit that dip, because in the dip we learned something, movement. And all of that extreme friction down here, we get to point number one. Now, if we can somehow see what it is that we're meant to see, if we can take certain things out of the realm of friction and bring them into a realm of non-friction, maybe I'll title this like Fact and Friction. It's something. And depending on what our focus is, that'll determine our path. So if the limit of our focus or the limit of our spiritual insight is ego driven, if it's grounded in what we've already experienced and what we wish to experience, and it's not open to anything beyond that, it keeps us in a smaller sort of frame of mind. So we just naturally follow the progression of the course that's already charted out. However, if we have that bigger picture mindset that the Magi can give us, then it's like we follow this course, but we're following the course not with the next point in mind, but with point number one in mind. And so when we're focused on point number one, when we get to this junction, we can recognize that we can shortcut this whole process and get to one quicker. But if we're more ego driven, if we're already more willing to, like, if our belief system is stagnant, and spirit is probably the most fluid element, at the very least it's represented by water. And if you introduce like intuition, that brings in an element of air into this water, because now the water is starting to affect your ability to perceive and how you think, rather than you just being pulled in a certain direction not knowing why. Water and air is the conversation. So definitely the most fluid elements, and it lets you shortcut certain things. Because more often than not, it's like we fall into the same things over and over. We fall to the same things over and over, but the level of extremism increases to get us to see whatever it is that we need to see. And it's possible that, like, all of 2020, while even though we had a pandemic and everything else, it could have been not as extreme if, all of those holes in all of these systems were being addressed as we've known about them, rather than continuing to ignore them until the entire system falls apart. And it's like when you have a crack over here and a crack over there and a crack over there, and you're like, well, it's just a few cracks, walk around it. Well, what happens when all the cracks connect? Then the entire floor falls out under you. And those are things, it's like it happens over time in ways that we can better manage it if we're paying attention and if we're willing to do that. But it's another thing, again, it leads to all of these different branching roads. Now, the card that we already see is the Chariot with the Magi. It's gorgeous. Where my glasses go? I don't want to miss any details. Because it's the only card that made itself known. This Magi card is interesting because it's the element of earth and the third eye. And there are some thorns around the hand, right? Which means that there are restrictions in what you can and can't do, right? It's not to dominate the will of someone else or to pray for someone else's downfall or to whatever. Like that kind of stuff, we should leave that alone unless you want to reap it, because unless you want to sow it because, unless you want to reap it, because what you sow, you reap. But the Magi, the magician, usually we see the cup, we see the wand, we see the sword and the pinnacle. And this one is just the pinnacle and the third eye. Now, I just talked about how the aligned third eye can be both the elements of water and air. And then fire would be represented in the leaves below the seed because it started to grow. And fire is the spark of life. It's what ignites us. So they're all here, but mostly in an earthen element. And the chariot is about movement. Oh my gosh, movement. So this is tying back to this. Again, there's McDonald's. So are you loving it? If you're loving this message, go ahead and give me a like, comment, subscribe, share. Sorry. Oh, I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist. And then also there's the 7 of Wands and the 6 of Coins. So this 6 of Coins, it has wings on it. Also, it has thorns. It has roots, the crystal, a nail, and a bone. And then the 7 of Wands is here. And in the 7 of Wands, we see 2 hands with those thorns around them at the top. This is the Magi. These are, I guess it would be 2 magicians coming together to create something. It's it reminds me of like in the show with the magic that I'm watching, they have stages. And stage 0 is the most powerful. Stage 1, it goes from like stage 0 to stage 8 or 9. And the lower the stage, the more powerful the wizard, the magician. And they're like, you know, I'm a stage 0, so it doesn't matter how many of you there are, you would never beat me. This is when strength in numbers isn't necessarily the way to go. It also carries that energy of like one person in their power is more powerful than a person in the masses. And there are multiple masses. So just because you aren't a part of the main mass or submass number 1 or submass number 2 doesn't mean like the magician. There's also this energy of like you connecting to the divine, like for yourself, getting to know the divine for yourself, creating that conversation between you and the divine more like directly, to the point where if the divine speaks to you, you would be able to hear, you would be able to listen, you would be able to see. And that's another part of this multiple paths thing, because nothing is stagnant, nothing is fixed, everything is fluid and volatile. And sometimes there are very, very, very subtle changes that can lead to connecting the cracks, or will lead you to see how the cracks are beginning to connect. So while typically you would see things as moving in one way, when you're in communion with the divine and when you hold that conversation for yourself, you will see ways to like shortcut things or to circumvent things, because you don't need to go there to learn that. You can just get it like almost like downloaded. If you're curious what this says over here, it says handing in your badge, because I had a dream where someone was going around with a bucket and they were collecting licenses, like pilots licenses, from a bunch of pilots. And I wrote that down so I wouldn't forget it. But with this and this 6 of Coins, it's like the hands of the divine are tied. The divine can't even release what it is that it wants to release. And so everything that you get, it's below this third eye. It's like you don't get anything that the system doesn't have to give you. There you go. You can see the hands of the divine at the top are tied. The divine holds the ability to firmly ground yourself in the nail, and an ability to grow beyond and to utilize the structure that you have to support something organic with that bone, something capable of growing. There are so many systems that we have in place that are not capable of growing, so many systems that we abide by that are decades, centuries, millennia old, that don't account for where we are today. But instead of updating, modernizing those things, we just kind of sort of allow areas of lawlessness and grayness to continue to expand. And it's not necessarily to have a law for every situation, but it's like if we're going to use the law how we're using the law, then maybe it should be like updated to modern times. And then over here, with the Seven of Wands and the Chariot, it's this, I guess it's a little bit of a question of, first of all, who's driving your life? And second of all, it's like, who's really behind the wheel? And it was about a year ago when I was like, Spirit's gone quiet. It's like it's giving us the keys and it's telling us to drive ourselves. And some people will take the keys and drive. Some people will just sit in the car wondering why Spirit isn't taking them where they want to go. And some people will hand the keys over to someone else, hoping that that person takes them where they want to go. But that person is under no obligation to do that. No one's under any obligation to do anything for anybody. So it's like, don't be so quick to, I guess, just hand over your keys. And again, there's an energy of reaping and sowing. Seven of Wands and the Six of Pentacles. And the underlying thing, it's the Five of Coins and the Star. What's funny is I was literally like, before I started this, I was looking at the Five of Coins. The Five of Coins in this deck, to me, it speaks of release. And how wisdom is the key to unlocking the fullness of the depths of love that we have to experience that maybe we haven't yet experienced. And it propels us in a way forward, moves us in a way, causes us to move in a way where hierophant systems and structures actually benefit people in the way that they're supposed to, rather than continuing to benefit select groups of people, or rather than them sort of hoarding and trying to hold on to power and control and things of that nature. With the Star card here, it's all being healed. And there's water being poured onto the fire that's on top of this eye that's looking up at the star. This coming off of the Magi, it's like the things that were being put in place to challenge, the things that were being asked to challenge right now. It's like there are some people who will be like, oh yes, the system is broken, but there's no way to fix it. So, or we don't know how to fix it, so let's just keep operating under this broken system. It's like, yes, they were wrong, but do they really deserve to be punished because they were wrong? Or do they deserve to face any kind of consequence because they were wrong? And I guess when you enter a certain sphere of people who can do much wrong with little to no consequence, then it becomes something that they get accustomed to. Or when you're dealing with certain people who have done wrong themselves, it comes the question of, well, if I rule, or if I say that this person deserves consequence because of the wrong that they've done, then doesn't that too mean that I deserve consequence for the wrong that I've done? And I don't want to suffer any consequence. And if I have the opportunity to set a precedent, then I'm going to set the precedent that no one's punished because I don't want to be punished. And there's also a question of not only like who's driving, but like who has the most to gain. And that, like, is someone working in their own interests, or are they working in your interest, or are they working in collective interest? I feel like what we might not see is the healing power of this release. it feels like our beliefs are going to be questioned in a way that maybe they haven't before. And maybe the Magi said something about that, allowing your beliefs to be questioned, to see multiple paths instead of just the single. But the Magi, not only are they a seer of the many paths, they then get to navigate those paths. But there are certain paths that you can't navigate without having done a certain amount of work. And I think that's what this is. The Five of Pentacles is like, are you still hurting? Hurting to the point where it affects your ability to, like, it affects your quality of life. It affects the choices and decisions that you make when it comes to your actual real life. Like, this is beyond just emotional. And the emotional can have an effect on, like, the way you live life, but this is bleeding into, like, your actual physical life, maybe even your health. There are things that you're holding on to that are, it's like it's causing your health to decline because the body can't hold on to stress like that. Or it doesn't do well under heavy negative emotion like that. This is stress, emotional stress, physical stress, mental stress. The body doesn't handle it well, not for sustained periods of time. And that's why, one of the reasons why they project that mental illnesses and are as like the level that they're at, and why the conversation for mental health is as important as it is. It's because now we're constantly subjected to stress. If it's not being overworked and underpaid, if it's not mental stress, if it's not emotional stress, there are stresses that everyone that you see on social media and advertisement has a certain body type and image that you don't have. And now that's another stress. Or there's the healing energy of the star over here that would put out those fires, or would put out that fire that clouds your vision. And when you put out a fire, depending on how much water you have, there would potentially be that, like the water vapors from the evaporated water from the fire. If you have enough water, then it may be less of that. So it's like the fog will begin to lighten before it clears. So that's what I got. I hope y'all have a good whatever whenever you see this, and I hope you're acting in alignment to make it even better. I hope you are acting so that that which you wish to experience becomes your reality, because for those who do all that stuff, the Magi is here. It's possible. It allows you to see things that you would have never seen before, exits when you need them, ways out of no way, the ram in the bush. You know, eyes looking toward the hills from which cometh your help in a time of need. But like that's another part of this. Not only, like, it doesn't do you any good to see the exit, it doesn't do you any good to see the higher possibilities or potentialities or timelines if you yourself aren't in a space where you'd make those choices and decisions to align with it. It would probably cause more frustration and, what is that? Polarization, more tension within yourself to see something greater but not be able to align to it because of things that you're still holding on to, or things that still haven't healed, things that you need to let go. And this things that you need to let go moving forward, starting into this magician or the Magi energy, well, here's the question of your foundation right here, and the different emotional and spiritual blockages through the 3, 5, 8 of Cups here, and the Ruler of Coins, you needing to make those tough decisions to begin to better that sort of foundation and to move and operate and interact with the world in a different way. And it's difficult, especially when you haven't practiced. But sometimes it's like, we ignore the cracks until they connect and the whole floor falls through. So if we can do less of that moving forward, it would serve all of us, like, very much so greatly. All right. Well, that's what I got. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.